right, let's do this. So this is your level work for those of you who are in person, just so you really don't need a separate sheet of paper. I mean, you can use a separate sheet of paper if you want to, but just in case, if you don't want or have one, let's just go to the back side, draw a line. There's really no work to show today, so you don't even need to give yourself that much space, okay? So let's just go to the bottom and then do some problems together. I'm kind of going to reteach all of this to you so that just in case you guys were confused, because I feel like with the negatives, it does become very, very confusing. Okay, so please write this problem down. You can't write huge because we do have a couple problems we're going over, okay? Square root of 64. I know you know it's 8. 64, the square root basically means what times what is 8, right? So first of all, first thing I want to do is I want to show you where to find the buttons on the calculator just in case you had forgotten, okay? So turn on your calculator. Please hit second plus 712, 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 second plus 712. That cleared your memory, second plus 712. So whenever your calculator does something that's weird or wrong or you can't get it off of it, second plus 712, second plus 712, second plus 712, second plus 712. All right, here we go. So to type in the square root, second plus 712. All right, so just type in the square root. Do you see how the square root symbol is right here underneath the x or above the x squared, but it's in blue? So whenever you need to access a blue button, you have to hit the blue button second first. So hit second and then x squared. So second and then x squared right here, those two buttons. And then that comes up 64. Boom, my answer is 8. So here's the thing. My answer is not 8. If you were to write 8 on a test, you would get it marked wrong. But you might be like, wait, in 7th grade and in 6th grade, I totally wrote 8 because 8 times 8 is 64 and I got it marked right. Well, here's the thing, guys. Now that you are in higher level math, we are making it more detailed. Like, yeah, 8 times 8 is 64. But remember from the video notes yesterday, what is my other answer? Does anyone remember? Thank you. Negative 8, right? So 8 times 8 is 64. And also negative 8 times negative 8 is also a positive 64. So you have two answer choices. So it's positive or negative 8. Instead of writing positive 8 or negative 8, like that's just a long thing to do, you write this plus or minus, this little symbol right here, and that means it could be positive or negative 8. So I'm telling you right now, if you just use your calculator today and you just write what the calculator screen says, you're going to get about half of the questions wrong, okay? Because the thing is, well, your calculator doesn't do like the plus or minus version. So you have to think about why. So the reason why is, first of all, you have to realize, okay, I don't see a little number in this square root symbol. So I know if there's no number, it's always an imaginary 2. So that's why it's two numbers that multiply into each other is 64. 8 times 8 is 64. Negative 8 times negative 8 is also 64. Okay, so let's do this one. The fourth root, so the fourth root of 256. All right, Jack, one more bite and then you're done, okay? So the fourth root of 256. So for this one, first of all, I can't say second square root 256 because that's a square root. That's assuming that I have a little 2 in here. So let me show you what to press. Okay, so all of you, you're going to hit the number 4 because it's the fourth root. Okay, so hit 4 first. Now you're going to hit math. Math is on the left side right underneath alpha. So hit math. And do you see how the fifth option, there's like this little X right here? That means that X is going to replace the 4, or the 4 is going to replace this X. So hit the fifth option, just number 5, and hit enter. So now do you see how that 4 has become teeny tiny? Okay, so now what you're going to do is you're going to type in 256, and then you're going to get the answer. Oh, so the answer is 4, kind of, not quite yet. But before I go into more detail, this is what you cannot do. Some kids are like, oh my gosh, that's so many buttons to press. I'm too lazy to do that. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit square root 256. I'm going to arrow, 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 back, 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 and try to insert a 4 in the, oh, no, you guys go like this, 4 square root 256. You guys do this instead. If you hit 4 square root 256, you see how this gives you a completely different answer? Because this is saying what is 4 times the square root of 256. Whereas if you had 4 math, fifth option, 256. You see how the difference is? Like this 4 is teeny tiny, this 4 is big. So that's how you know you did it wrong. So you have to know how to type it in. Your answer is 4. Okay, well, here's the thing. My calculator always gives me the positive version, but I have to use my brain, and I have to figure out, is it 4? Is it positive -4? Or is it just -4? Well, I'll tell you right now, if it were just -4, your calculator would say -4. So you really just have to decide, is it 4 or is it plus or minus 4? Read. Plus or minus 4. So the reason why this is also plus or minus 4 is because I know that 4 numbers have to equal 256. So 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. But doesn't that also mean that a negative times a negative times a negative times a negative also equals a positive 256? That's how I know. So basically, the kind of general rule of thumb is if your little number, your radical, that these are called radicals, if your radical is an even number, then you're normally going to have a plus or minus. But if your radical is an odd number, it's something else. Okay, so let's try another one then. The cube root of 27. So let's type this in our calculator first. So I have not square root, so I have to do 3. And then I do math, and then the 5th option, right? Because I want a little 3. So the cube root, and then I have 27. So that's what I'm typing in. And then I get 3. So I know my answer, the digit is 3. But now I have to use my brain. All right, so is it 3 or is it plus or minus 3? Okay, so let's see. 3 numbers have to equal to positive 27. So I know 3 times 3 times 3 is 27, but can negative times a negative times a negative equal a positive 27? No. So do you see how my only answer here is positive 3? My only answer is a positive. I don't need to write the little plus in front, but I'm just showing you it's not plus or minus this time. It's only positive because I have an odd number in here. If I had an odd number, that means that it's only going to be that one symbol, okay? Because an odd number of negatives doesn't give me a positive. Okay, so let's try another one then. The 5th root of 32. So practice typing this in your calculator first. 5, math, the 5th option, 32. That's the only way that you can type in these problems, okay? You can't have like a big 5 in front because that's a completely different problem. All right, can someone raise their hand if they got a number in their calculator? Cameron? Okay, so my answer is 2. Now I have to just decide 2 or plus or minus 2. So remember, you have 5 of them, so 5 2s equal 32. Mason, do you think it's 2 or plus or minus 2? 2. Just 2, good. Because a negative times a negative times a negative times a negative times a negative 5 times gives you a negative 32, but this is a positive. So do you see how my answer can only be a positive 2 here? So here's the thing. Today, like the math part is not tricky because you can just use your calculator. I think it's the plus or minus part that's the trickiest for us. Okay, here's another one then. This one's even harder. The cube root of negative 216. Oh, there's a negative inside now. That's okay. The cube root of negative 216. Okay, so let's type that in. 3, math, 5th option. Or you could really use the 4th option because the 4th option gives you the 3 there. But if you use the 4th option, notice how like you have to take away your original 3 then. So if that confuses you what I just said, then just do the same thing. 3, math, 5th option. Negative, guys, is not minus. You have to type this negative down here. This is a negative symbol. This is a minus symbol. In fact, I think if you hit minus, you're going to get an error. Negative 216, like that. Jack, what'd you get?
I got -6.
So you should have gotten -6 on your calculator screen. So you have to think, you have 3 numbers. So is it going to be -6 or is it going to be plus or minus 6?
Plus or minus.
Okay, so if you think it's plus or minus, you're saying that 6 times 6 times 6 gives you -216?
No.
No. So do you see how this answer is only negative? Does that kind of make sense, guys, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Last type before you just try some by yourself now, okay? So now this time the negative is on the outside of my problem. Negative 5th root of 1024. So negative fifth root of 1024. So you can type this in, type negative first, negative is on the bottom, and then 5 math 5. Oh wait, no, sorry, that's wrong. Because do you see how if I hit negative and then 5 and then the math, the negative is not in the front of the problem? Okay, so this is what I had to do. Sorry. So if the negative is there, I have to hit 5 and then math and then the fifth option, 1024, and then arrow back, and then stick the negative finally in the front. So do you see how that's a little bit different? Okay. So someone that has not spoken yet, what is this in my calculator? Sienna? So I should have gotten -4. So first of all, I have to think to myself, don't worry about this negative yet. We haven't even touched it. But if this is -4, could it also be a +4?
Yes.
Yes, it could be a +4 because 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 is also a 1024. But do you see how you typed in the negative like in your actual answer? So that's why my answer is just -4. So I'm saying this. This is what I'm trying to clarify to you. This answer without the negative is ±4 because multiplying a +4 5 times gives you 1024, but it's not negative. Where's my, it's not negative. But then since you have a negative in front, well then that positive just has to basically turn into a negative. Okay. Yes, Mason.
Why can't you just not put the negative into your calculator and then just put it at the end of the problem?
You could. I'm just, yeah. Okay. All right. So let's try a couple by yourself now. Let's see if you can do these by yourself. 7th root of 128. Go. So this is still on the bottom blank side. This is not your level work yet. 7th root of 128. Type it in your calculator, get the answer, and then you just have to think, is it positive, negative, or is it just the answer your calculator screen says it is? So you should all hopefully know how to type this in your calculator now. Someone online, can you tell us, is it 2 or is it ±2? Someone online.
It's just 2.
It's just 2. Okay, so here's the reason why it's just 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7 of them. So if I had 7 -2s, wouldn't that end up giving me a -128? That's why I can't have a -2. This is not equal to -2. It's just +2. Okay, let's try the next one. Square root of -64. Hey, first of all, by the way, there's no number in here. So if there's no number in here, what's always the imaginary number? 2. Okay, so just as a heads up. Dun, dun, dun. You see something on your calculator that's like, what? Does anyone think they know what this answer is? Owen? Not. So basically no solution. There's no answer. Think about it, right? And like if you type this in your calculator, you should get like error or something on your screen. Like I know that 8 times 8 is 64, but 8 times 8 is +64. -8 times -8 is +64. No two numbers multiplied by itself that are the same is going to give me a negative answer. That's why sometimes I can have no solution as my answer. Okay, then try this one. Negative on the outside. There's an answer there. If the negative is on the outside. Okay, someone online other than Kip, can you tell us what the answer is?
-8.
Yes, the answer is -8. Good. So you would think that positive or 64 is ±8, but since you have a negative there, you just stick the negative in the front. So it's really just -8. Okay, my answer is -8. All right, basically do 64 and then stick a negative in the front. All right, last 3 before we do something different then. The 8th root of -256. and then the eighth root of positive 256, and then the negative eighth root of 256. Do you see how they're literally like the same numbers, but depending on where your negative is, it can change your answer? So try to find all three of those answers, and you should get three completely different answers for the set.
Miss Friesenhahn,
Yes.
I think I put it like the last one into my calculator wrong because when I did like the negative square root of 64, it gave me negative 9.79.
Yeah, because look, I put negative square root 64 and I got negative 8. So
How did you put that into my? Do you put the negative and then like the square root symbol and then 64?
So Kip, you might have written minus instead of negative. So hit negative, which is on the bottom.
Never mind, I got it.
Okay.
I put the square root, then I did like the back.
Yeah. So you only need to do like the square root and then the back thing if it's a number other than square root, like if it's a number other than 2.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, Louise, filter your nose, okay? Okay, this one, in person, first one. What do we think the answer is? Mason?
No solution.
There's no such thing. It's no solution, right? 8 numbers cannot give you a negative answer when you multiply it together. So hopefully when you type this in, you would have gotten error on your calculator screen. There is an answer for this one though. What do we think? Cameron? 2? Is that it? It's plus or minus. Guys, remember if you are multiplying a negative 8 times, don't you still get a positive number? Because so basically remember if it's even in here, then it can be plus or minus, but if it's not even, then it can. All right, so then what about this last one then? What do we think, Grayson?
-2.
It's just -2 because it could be plus or minus 2 for this, but then since there's a negative, you just stick it in. So that one's -2. Notice how 3 different questions, very, very slightly different just with the negatives, and you get 3 completely different answers. Okay, really quick, something else that you learned yesterday that I want you to remember is this. Okay, if you have the 4th root of 25, you're going to have questions in your level work that says to rewrite it, not to solve it, but to rewrite it. This is the same thing as saying, okay, you have 25 to the 1st power, right? So that's going to be 25 to the 1/4. You see how we took that as 25 to the 1st power, and then this is always going to be your denominator. Okay, so the 5th root of 7.9. Someone in person, can you tell us that's what to the what power? If I had to rewrite this, that would be what to the what power? Grayson?
7.9 to the 1/5.
7.9 to the 1/5, because this is the 1st power, so it's the 1. And then remember, your radical is always going to be your denominator. Okay, here's a trick question. Don't be tricked. Square root of 7. Don't tell me the answer, but tell me that's like what to the what power? Don't be tricked. Don't be tricked. Don't be tricked. Luis?
7 to the 1/2.
Sorry. Yeah, 7 to the 1/2, right? Because there's a 1 here. You don't see a number here, but remember, if you don't see a number, it's always an imaginary 2. So it's 7 to the 1/2. Okay, last thing I want you to realize is this then. If I have 32 to the 3/5, and you want to write that answer, like what does that equal? Okay, so you could type that in your calculator, 32 to the alpha y equals 3/5. Like you see what I did? I'm typing this problem in, 32 to the 3/5. I get 8. Well, here's the question. Is it 8 or is it plus or minus 8? Okay, so remember how we said the denominator is always the radical, the denominator is always the radical, the denominator is always the radical. So this denominator 5, it's basically saying it's the 5th root of something. So if you have a 5, it's an odd number. Would it be 8 or plus or minus 8? 8, right? Because an odd number means that you can't have like 5 negatives to equal a positive 32. Okay? Yes, Reed?
Can you do like the volume equals 27?
Yeah, I'll do that. So now I have, let's say I have this then, 125 to the 2/3. So if I type in 125 to the alpha y equals 2/3 like this, I know I get 25. But here's my question. Is it positive negative 25 or just 25? Just 25, because remember the denominator tells you what the radical is. There's 3 of them. I can't have 3 numbers that are negatives to equal a positive 125. Okay, what about this then? Negative 128 to the 5/7. Last one. So, parentheses, negative 128 to the alpha y equals 5/7. My calculator tells me negative 32. So is it negative 32 or is it plus or minus 32? It's just negative, right? Because the denominator tells me it's a 7th root. I can't have 7 positives. I can't have 7 positive numbers to equal a negative 128. So you have to look at your denominator. Okay, so level work. You should be able to do all of this. This is just kind of like the rules that we just went over. So there's nothing to solve. Start with number 1. When it says find the indicated nth root of a, like you might be like, what are they asking me to do? The n is the root or the radical, and that is your base. So really they're saying, what's the square root of 64? Like that's what they're asking you. This n goes in the little like radical symbol, and that 64 is your number. So figure out what that is. Don't forget your pluses and minuses. Okay. All right. Well, you will. I mean, it's your level work. So on the back side, someone wanted us to go over this one. So if the volume is 27 feet cubed, what is each side length? So if there are 3, like length times width times height, isn't that the cube root of 27? You're basically finding the cube root of all these numbers. And that's all you're doing. So just find the cube root of 27. What's that answer? And then boom, you're done. That's how long each side length would be. Does that make sense, Reed? Okay. All right. So you have your level work to finish in class.